Welcome to 2021, inmates. 1991 was one of the strangest and greatest years in modern music history. It's a year that opened with Vanilla Ice, Warrant, and Candyman, each with 2 hits on the Billboard Hot 100. By the end of the year, we saw huge releases from U2, Van Halen, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, R.E.M., Ozzy Osbourne, and 2 albums from Guns N' Roses. We also saw debuts from bands like Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and Nirvana that changed the music scene forever. Buckle up, rock and rollers. We're going to jump into our time machine and take the magical mystery tour back to 1991. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Prisoners of Rock and Roll, Episode 8, our first episode of 2021. We made it to the other side. I'm one of your hosts, Bruce Kramer, and I'm here with the best rhythm section in podcast land, Doug McCusker and Ryan McCusker.
Hello!
Hey, everybody. How you doing? Happy New Year.
So we decided we were going to jump in our musical time machine and talk about 1991. That's 30 years ago.
Feels like yesterday.
Look at all these great albums that came out in 91.
This is amazing. I mean, the songs and the albums that came out, and there's a lot of good stuff, and there's a lot of garbage that came out, too, that was really, a lot of really popular garbage, too.
You know, I was looking through all the songs in 91. It's like looking through your receipts through the years. And you're just like looking through, like, why did I even spend money on that? Why did I listen to that? It's just very confusing time in music.
Maybe before we dive in, I have a couple notes on what was going on in the world in 1991. The first Gulf War is going on. The Soviet Union fell apart. Jeffrey Dahmer gets arrested. The Super Nintendo came out.
Ooh.
And then Kenny Rogers started his fine restaurant.
I remember
Kenny Rogers Roaster.
Yeah. Man, there was a lot of crazy things going on in 91. Just looking at perspective as a fan, trying to remember what I was listening to before 1991 leading up to it. It was a lot of Motley Crue and that first Guns N' Roses album. We were listening to the Black Crowes. Yeah. We were already listening to Metallica by then.
One album I remember that I listened to heavy in 90 was Megadeth, Rust in Peace.
Yeah.
That was a big album for me growing up.
When 1991 came in, man, you had Bart Simpson had a hit, Do the Bartman.
Was that 90?
That was 91.
Was oh Lord.
Yeah, that's how bad we were hurting for good tune.
1991 is a weird year in that the pop music largely stinks.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of artists that artists that are still popular now. That's the year they started. And it's also the beginning of grunge. So I'm not even sure where to start. Maybe we just talk about some of the bad pop music and we just get it out of the way. We talk and we graduate into all of the cool stuff.
Let's do a few things on. We'll trash a few things and then we'll celebrate a few things. You had a lot of different acts going on out there in 1991. And one of the worst acts I think there was Another Bad Creation.
Oh, I forgot about them.
Yeah. There were a bunch of little kids. I don't know if everybody remembers them. And they were protégés of Belle Biv DeVoe.
Were they the guys that wear their pants on backwards?
No, that was Chris Cross.
Oh, okay.
They didn't come in until like 92.
Okay.
But
he only knows that because he's got the concert ticket.
I do. I keep everything. No, I mean, that's what I think of when I, 91, like what was happening back then. And it was like, everybody was wearing the starter caps then with the tags still in it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that song though. Like,
play it.
I can play.
Oh, do you have it?
Oh,
yes. You guys are prepared. Oh, unfortunately, I remember this.
Dude, but this was what was on the radio and everything. But then
that's horrible.
They were looking for anything that was kid friendly to put on the radio to get kids on MTV to watch whatever they would do.
Capitalism at its best.
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
I wrote down a couple notes of some pop songs from 91. Mm-hmm. This is a really bad list, but Rush, Paula Abdul.
Keanu was in that video, wasn't he?
Keanu.
Was he?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, he was.
I was wondering whatever happened to that cartoon cat in the other video.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever she tours, he shows up.
Everything I Do It For You by Bryan Adams. That was
a big song.
I think that was the number one selling single of the year.
That was a big song.
That song is probably still played in every dentist office.
That's from the Robin Hood movie, right? That was a big big movie and song.
I hate that song.
Yeah, you heard it too many times.
I like some Bryan Adams stuff.
Yeah.
Time, Love, and Tenderness, Michael Bolton, again.
Never heard it.
That dude's mullet was everywhere
he's just...
in 91. Rico Suave, Gerardo.
That was big.
Gerardo.
I found somebody called him the crappy 90s version of Pitbull.
I can see that. I can see that.
Amy Grant was huge.
Baby.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was big. Yeah.
Bette Midler, From a Distance. That
was a big song.
That won the Grammy, I think, that year for Song of the Year. UB40 had 2 hits. Shiny Happy People by REM. We talked
did
about
we kill that song?
We talked about REM in our first episode. It just even a list of like I pulled together a list of the songs that hit number 1 in 97, and it's all Roxette, Wilson Phillips.
Roxette was
They were
huge.
cool.
Timmy T, Paula Abdul, Brian Paula Abdul's on here a couple times. Madonna, Justify My Love, the song that was the video that was basically
the video was more popular than
Right.
the actual song.
Right.
And Prince wrote that, right?
Dude, I don't know about that.
Didn't Prince write that?
I don't know.
I don't know anything about that.
After seeing the video, that makes perfect
Yeah,
sense
I think
to
he
me.
did.
Do you remember the video of that?
Yeah.
Do you remember it was playing? Do you remember the jukebox? Like network. That was like the only place you would find it.
Yeah, they played it on MTV, but it had to be like after like 11 o'clock at night because so many
Yeah.
people complained about it.
Now it's just typical TV.
Now it's on
Yeah.
YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what else you got on pop music.
You had Good Vibrations, Marky Mark going on at that time.
Marky Mark.
Marky Mark. You had Motown Philly, Boys of the Men was going on.
That's still a good one. That's
but you know
know,
it's not rock and roll.
Yeah, I hear you.
Prince put his worst song out, I think, ever in '91 was Cream.
Yeah.
That's
That's New Power Generation.
that
right?
was another really weird video.
Yeah.
yeah.
He was wearing like the
Is that the chap?
Yeah, he was
The
wearing
chaps?
chaps.
Yeah, Vanilla Ice still on the chart. Play that funky music, white boy.
You actually mentioned "Do the Bartman" by Bart Simpson.
Yeah.
you can play a little bit of that too. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's
why don't
just-
you do that? Because it was on the charts. That's how big the Simpsons were.
It's really bad. And this was like just when the Simpsons had just started.
Yeah,
too.
they were starting coming out with T-shirts.
Right, they were like 89 it came out.
Terrorizing people wherever I go. It's not intentional, just keeping the flow. Fixing test scores to get the best scores. Dropping banana peels all over the floor.
I was just, after we heard that, I'm glad that the recorder's across the table from me because I was going to hit the electric chair.
Automatically.
Button on it,
Yeah.
just like instinctively.
But that video was on MTV all the time. It was like Simpsons Nation, man. It was like Beatlemania with the Simpsons.
Yeah,
it was
they,
all
I mean, they were
over.
like lunchboxes and dolls and
God,
Hey
and-
Man, Don't Have a Cow
Yeah.
and all that. Eat My Shorts.
But that's
and all
when
that stuff.
like Congress and like Tipper Gore and all those guys were like, "Yo, no Bart Simpson. This is a bad influential."
Yeah.
Now it's like the longest running sitcom of all time.
Yeah. So as part of us pulling together the playlist to go with every episode, Ryan made one for all the great music in 91. And he made one from songs from 91 that stink. And a lot of the stuff we already just talked about, like Amy
Yeah.
Grant and
I like the
Bryan Adams
I like
and-
the thing that I was talking about today about CNC Music Factory, "Gonna Make You Sweat."
they only had like those 2 songs, but they were huge.
They were super huge.
Do you remember the two guys behind the CNC Music Factory?
They were 2 producers.
Yeah.
They were the band, and Freedom Williams and the chick, they were like the model front. But what happened was, "I'm Gonna Make You Sweat" came out. And what they did was they used this woman that sang the background vocals and then used a model to pretend that it was her lip syncing. So she was like Milli Vanilling it. And then Marky Mark found out about it and he like got her to play on the record and put her in the video because they were discriminating against her because she was a bigger person.
in Good Vibrations?
Yeah,
it's the same. It's the same
yeah.
person
It's the
singing.
if you
And
play it
that's-
back to back to each other, it's the same chick.
I don't want to do that.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
It's the same
But
chick.
that's the video that Marky Mark video is. I watch it at least 35 times a day. That's the one he has no shirt on and he's lifting like cinder blocks and he's all like
Yeah.
shirtless and
But going back to the CNC Music Factory, now was she a known singer? The woman that originally sang that?
No, she was just a background singer,
Yeah.
but like she was a big woman, and they were like, you know what, you're not going to cut it to be on MTV.
Right.
We're gonna put this woman that's a
Yeah.
beautiful model, and
Who's
she's-
marketable.
Exactly.
can you imagine that?
Not today.
Pop music was, you still had all that kind of 80s, that synthesizer. It's cheesy. It's like, it's weak and soft. And
Do you think it got soft because like the party was still going on? Like everybody's coming out of the 80s. Like, you know, you had the Gulf War Cup going on and this and that. But I think that people still had that idea that they wanted the party.
I think so. I mean, you had songs like Unbelievable by EMF was like a party song.
Yeah. But then you had that Club MTV show that we were talking about. Like, dancing was still a thing. You still had a million, like, the Dancing on Air shows. That was probably still on.
Yeah, I don't know. Pop music in 91 to me is just, a lot of it is just like, and you hear it and you're kind of like, it's nostalgic because you're like, oh, I remember that song. Although there is a lot of stuff when I was looking at the Billboard 100 for the end of the year, I had no idea who a lot of those artists were. Like,
Yeah, there was a lot of dance music on there that I didn't recognize.
yeah, I listened to a couple of them just to get ready for the show, and then I just had no interest in going any further. I'm like, I don't need to hear any of this stuff.
Well, what was some of the other bad songs on your list there, Bruce?
London Beat, there's a song by the KLF, and these are songs like if you heard them, you'd know them. Kathy Dennis had a couple songs. Wilson Phillips.
Color Me Bad.
Color Me Bad.
We can just sit here and talk about them for a couple hours.
I mean, that song, I Want to Sex You Up, and then they had I Adore Mia Moore.
Kenny G was in that band. they all had like a lookalike.
Yeah.
It was like George Michael, Kenny G.
Yeah, it was.
You know.
They're
You're
really
kind of
bad.
right.
It was just a bad time of music that's going on then. You had Michael Jackson at that time coming out with Black and White. And what a strange concept that was of him. The video, what he did was so confusing. Of what is he trying to get the message through?
I had some notes about that song. So that year, he signed a record contract with Sony worth $1 billion.
What?
It was one of the biggest contracts ever given to a music artist, and it covered albums, featured movies, TV shows, and they gave him his own record label. And the movie part, he was negotiating making a movie with Tim Burton or David Lynch, which is just like...
The David Lynch thing would be... Imagine that.
Which is like, imagine what that would be.
That's a
would've
movie
been-
that he wants to make.
Yeah,
That
and
would've
remember
been
when that video, Black or White, came out, it was simulcast everywhere at the
Yes,
same
it was.
time. It was like an event.
Yes, it was.
What a weird video that was.
Yeah.
When they were all changing person to person at the end of it.
The morphing.
It's like, you're black, you're white.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
morphing.
And then
in
it was
the-
a Chinese
yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
And then it was a little black woman. Then it was a tall white guy.
And then it had that weird like 5-minute thing at the end where he's
Yeah.
just like smashing a car and
He's
That got
yelling.
banned.
himself.
That got banned.
Yeah, because then he turns into like a puma or a jaguar or something. And that video debuted simultaneously in 27 countries to 500 million people.
Dude, I just remember him dancing on top of that car and just smashing all the windows and grabbing himself.
But I think Pepsi had his back. Like, they were one of his big promoters. And Pepsi didn't like it. And they were like, yeah, you got to take this off of there. You know, this is not like...
That was like the extended version. When they were
Yeah.
putting it on MTV, they were cutting that out by
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, they cut the
Yeah.
end. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
But
They-
can you imagine, like, all over the world, Michael Jackson, like, grabbing his crotch and screaming, oh, around the whole world at the same time?
Do you think he was laughing to himself?
get-
Like, ha, ha, ha.
don't get
Yeah, all the way to the bank.
Yeah, I know.
I think he was trying to be an artist, and just like everything Michael did, he was misunderstood.
All right, cool. We good with the bad part of 91? You got
Let's see
something else?
here. Come on, guys. We have to talk about how bad Shiny Happy People was.
Didn't we kill that song?
No, we can't. The other one, Bad Religion song.
Losing my
Oh,
religion.
Losing my religion.
Well, let's kill this one, too. Hit the button.
No, not yet. I don't even know.
That's a terrible song. That has the girl from the B-52s.
Katie something.
Yeah.
She's the best part of that.
Yeah, she is
song.
the best part of that song.
That is I brought this up when we killed the other song. I like that album. That I think that's like one of the last albums by it's probably one of the only albums of REM I like.
You might lose your cool card. Dude.
I didn't like the ones before it. I don't like a lot of the stuff they did after.
They even let the bass player sing. What's the guy's Mike? No, it's not Mike. It's someone. What's his name? Do you remember his name? He's just singing those "Shining Happy."
Yeah.
It's
just a
horrible.
terrible song.
The video was horrible. The girl from B-52s was the best part of the video.
Yeah, some of these bad pop songs had good videos, though, man. All the chicks in the videos, like the CNC Music Factory dancers. And I remember MTV having all those videos. Like, do you guys remember the I Touched Myself?
Yes, that was one of the songs that I had on my list of
Is that good or
the
bad?
songs that turned 30.
Is it good
No,
or bad?
I think it's a good song. Adolescence at its best. I don't know if I would have got through puberty without that video.
She's pretty hot too.
She was hot, man. I don't. She had those bangs over her eyes, man.
What was the name of the band?
The Vinyls.
The Vinyls. So it's even funnier that it was an actual band and not just her, because you can tell you anything about the rest of the band besides her.
I just think big boobs.
I had this on cassette single.
Good for you for not buying the whole thing. can sing.
God, she was so sexy.
We should do a show about how they got their record contract and how they made it to the top of the charts.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is
that
amazing.
That song was like
Well,
everywhere.
It just proves like how like the 90s were so visual. You know, MTV was such a big tool in promoting music. Are we done with this bad music? Because I want to talk about some good music now. Stuff that changed our lives.
Yeah, let's move on and talk about some of the good stuff, because that was the big surprise to me is when we dove into this, was just how much good music came out of 1991. I don't even know where to start with this.
I know. We just jump in and pick a band.
Okay, here's something for you. It's the beginning of grunge and the end of a certain sound of rock music. So let's talk about Queen Innuendo.
Great album.
This
Okay.
is Freddie Mercury's last album that he did before he passed away.
Yes.
They released it, and 9 months later, he passed away. I don't feel that Queen really got their potential across to America until a year later when Wayne's World came out. Queen is like, they always had We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions, and this and, you know, all that. They were always staple, but they never had that success that they have now, in which everybody knows what they are. So on Innuendo, you have Show Must Go On. Here's a guy saying, you know, the show must go on. He's coming to the end of his life. And it's heartbreaking to listen to. The breakdown, the guy was such a pure artist. You know, don't you think so, Ryan?
I think he was dying, and he was like writing his memoirs to himself. He looked so bad in those videos. He just was deteriorating, and it must like hurt him so bad to hit those notes, the sacrifices, the pain that he was going through in life, and still make this amazing song like "The Show Must Go On" or "Who Wants to Live Forever." "I'm Going Slightly Mad" is one of my favorite songs on that album.
These are the days of our lives.
Yeah,
It's really...
it was like him saying goodbye.
Headstrong from that album is one of my favorite Queen songs.
Yes, that's a great song.
You're right. It's a great album, and knowing what he was going through, and you can read some articles about him, how long it would take him to do some of those takes because he was so exhausted. And
Yeah.
I shared a video with you guys today of, it was like the behind the scenes footage of that video. These are the days of our lives.
Yeah.
And he looks awful. I mean, he's got
he was
so much
dying.
makeup. Right. And the video is in black and white, probably to hide the fact that he looks so sick.
I remember looking at it as a kid and being like, obviously after, like Doug said, America, they were big, but they weren't like super big. In America, it's a shame they don't love you until you're dead. I remember them like going back in the catalog and showing "I'm Going Slightly Mad." And I had the album and looking at the videos, like, man, he really looked like he was dying.
His mustache is gone. He's really
Yeah.
pale. He just... It's disturbing and sad it's a shame.
He was still out there, and no, really, Freddie Mercury has AIDS. Nobody even like thought about it.
Yeah, I think even when he finally acknowledged that he passed away, it was like the next day.
Yeah, it was like 2 days later.
It was really
Yeah.
close.
And I think that's what really when the AIDS people start recognizing it, like even though it was around for a few years before that, and you know, a star like Freddie Mercury, and it hit home to so many people that were coming up in music, like Axl Rose and this, and like all these bands that were influenced by Queen. And Freddie Mercury dies, is considered like one of the greatest frontmen of all time, gave the greatest concert of all time at Live Aid, you know?
We talked about Queen is a big band that had it. Maybe we continue about established artists coming out with big hits, and then we could talk about the grunge stuff that kind of came up, because like the debuts.
Yeah. Like Van Halen had a huge hits through 91.
For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge is 30 years old.
Yeah, like that's the album that Right Now was on. Man, do you remember how huge it was?
That video, man, was just cool.
Yeah.
Like, I just enjoyed that video. Pound Cake.
I love that song.
We'll play a
Play
little bit of
that
it.
beginning with that drill.
When this album came out, it was so big. This was my Van Halen album. This is like my first one I ran out and bought when it came out.
We talked about that in the episode on our favorite American rock and roll bands. Would you pick Van Halen, or Ryan, you picked
Yeah.
Van Halen, and we said which singer do we like? And all three of us said we preferred the Sammy Hagar
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
over David Lee Roth.
We went and saw the Pound Cake tour. We saw them at the Spectrum. They were awesome. Alice in Chains opened up for Van Halen.
And they got booed off the stage.
And they got booed off the stage.
Yeah, well, I think we'll get to Alice in Chains.
Yeah. But it was crazy how MTV was putting these middle-aged men as still rock stars on MTV. Guys like Van Halen or Tom Petty or U2 or the guys from Metallica. You know, they were a bunch of older guys, you know, and they were making them still rock stars. But why prior, like MTV now is like Justin Bieber's like 30 years old now.
Established bands with big hits. You had Van Halen for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, Tom Petty, Into the Great Wide Open, U2, Octung Baby, REM, Out of Time, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, Metallica, The Black Album, and Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2.
Wow.
The fact that that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 albums right there, if that's only thing that came out that year, you're like, that's a really great year in music.
But you still listen to all those albums, though.
All
I
those
do,
albums.
right.
Yeah.
All those albums. Like, I listen to Octone Baby to this day, and it still blows me away.
That album has such a different sound of their other stuff.
They were having a really hard time recording that album, and they were going out to the discos at night, and Bono and Edge were getting into these disco beats. Yet you hear Mysterious Ways, or you hear
Zoo TV.
the Zoo TV or the Fly. They have this like techno kind of thing going for them. I think they were changing their image at the time again, which was fitting their music as an art form. You know, Bono invented the Fly Man. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, with the goggles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weren't they
I
like
forgot
Lou Reed's like sunglasses and like
It was-
Elvis's leather jacket?
I'd
and,
forgotten about that.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
why don't we play like 30 seconds of The Fly? And it's
Yeah.
like, and maybe you guys listening at home, like, just think of another U2 song.
No,
like Rattle
it was-
and Hum or.
Yeah, the Joshua Tree was like a couple years right before this, and then a couple years later they hit you with this.
They say the sun is sometimes eclipsed by a moon. You know I don't see you when she walks in the room. It's no secret that a friend is someone who lets you help. It's no secret that a liar won't believe anyone else. They say a secret is something you tell one other person. So I'm telling you.
My favorite U2 song is on this album. It's called Until the End of the World. So do you know what that song's about?
I do not.
It's about Jesus before he goes on the cross, and Judas is trying to talk to him like, you know, you're walking around like a crazy person, like talking about the end of the world and all that.
Huh.
And he's trying to change his mind about what are you about to do here.
Yeah.
When this album came out, the hardcore U2 fans did not like it at all. Like Ryan was saying, you're coming off of the Joshua Tree and like Rattle and Hum and all that, and then here's this album that people don't know, make heads or tails out of. Like, what is this?
No, I remember it coming out, and I wasn't even a U2 fan, but I knew it was different. I knew it was different than the Joshua Tree, or I knew it was different than, you know, even with the B.B. King. They were playing with B.B. King a couple of years before that.
I feel like if you heard that song, if you've never heard that song before, and you just walked in the door here and I put the headphones on and played it for you, you might think that's a new song. Like that doesn't sound dated to me at all.
I don't think it sounds dated.
No, especially if you put like some remixed demo thing. Like they could release Octone Baby 30-year anniversary and put a super remix of The Fly out there. It would be huge.
Like there's an affect on his voice there, but it's not that crappy auto-tune that made me
No.
go bonkers about Cher
It's
a
when
couple
you
episodes ago.
you had to invent things to get your sound through.
I'm not a big fan of some of their newer stuff, but they're always pushing the envelope with like their stage show and the studio.
They're always recreating themselves. Like a couple weeks ago, we talked about the Beatles, and like granted, like U2 did a longer time span, but they're always changing themselves. You always got to stay fresh. You always got to keep it going, like keep it relevant. And like when they did Octune Baby, they recorded it in Germany. Zoo Station, the opening song, is a station in Germany where the train would go, and people would get off to go to the punk rock show. It would be like kind of, I don't know, like the Grand Central Station. And you have people going to the opera on tuxedos. Then you have all the punk rock people. Then you have all the techno people, and this and that. It's a big melting pot.
And they were totally into it. They were like, we need something new, and we're standing right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
You know, like Doug said, they had all this influential things, and you hear it on Octone Baby. It's so diverse. Like, every song on there is different.
They actually kicked off the tour in Philadelphia, didn't they?
They did.
And I remember seeing on MTV News, they had the sound, like, you know, working out the show, working out the kinks and all the sound down at Hershey. But, you know, Kurt Loder goes up to Bono and is like, oh, you know, why aren't you playing any of the old songs on this tour? And Bono simply said, because I don't feel like it, you know, because they wanted to reinvent themselves. So why you choose great band, man?
Doug, you mentioned like the Fly character. I made me think of Bowie, like always coming up with these the Thin White Duke and Ziggy Stardust, like just these personas, and like he wore that outfit everywhere, and like even him wearing like sunglasses, he still does it, but they're like different. They're like yellow.
He changes like a chameleon. Like when he was doing Joshua Tree, he was a cowboy. You know, when he was doing Round Humming, he was a blues guy. Now, Octone Baby, he was like the ultimate rock star.
But toward the end of that tour, he became like this, like, I forget the name of the character that he played.
Manifesto.
Yeah. And he changed into this Vegas, like swanky glitter jacket, devil ears.
Yeah, he's been on tour for 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, characters change. It's a shame that Bono like got lost in his own world and decided he was going to save the world that he lives in. But man, he at one time he was a great front man. I'm not taking away from anything that he is now. I went and saw the Joshua Tree tour, and I had tears in my eye the whole show. But man, I wish Bono would stop trying to save the world and just be the Fly Man again.
They do put on a fantastic stage show. I mean, the elaborate, the stage setup and the lights and all the stuff. So, yeah, that's it with you two. They're really good. Which one of these bands you want to talk about next? I know you guys really, really want to dive into Out of Time by REM, but we can just kind of skip over that. I think we've said everything we want to say about
Shiny, happy people.
We'll cross that one off the list. The next one on the list that I have here by the established artist was Blood Sugar Sex Magic by Red Hot Chili Peppers. That album was such a hardcore part of my listening life in high school.
I mean, they really pushed the envelope.
This is the album that turned the page for them, what they are today. It changed my world. One of the many albums I have written down in 91 that changed my world. It changed the way you thought, the way you listened. Like, what is this? You know, even though like you had Higher Ground before that and this and that, it was dark, it was dangerous, it was just...
It was really sexual.
Yeah.
I mean, I was watching some of their videos today. I was watching Give It Away. And I'm like, man, these guys didn't give a shit if people thought they were gay, straight. They didn't care. You know, they're all painted up in glitter, and Anthony Kiedis has his legs spread out and grabbing himself and whatnot. And I'm like, wow, they put this on MTV during the middle of the day in 1991. You know,
it was groundbreaking.
And you know, you got two guys kissing in it in 1991.
Yeah.
You know, they were the funkiest funkers around, dude.
The funkiest funkers.
Yeah.
Even at the end of that album, there's a song, They're Red Hot. Let me play it a little bit because I have a reason behind this. That's a Robert Johnson song.
Is it?
Yeah. That they rewrote and sped up.
Their influences are like all over the place, and it shows, and especially in this album. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Like some of the songs I've written down here, like Funky Monks, Power Quality. My favorite song, Mellowship, Slinky B Major. You know, it's unreal.
That's a great song. My band used to play that, and it was like,
What Mellowship?
oh yeah, that was like one of the hardest songs you can imagine playing.
Then you got like Breaking the Girl. And Chad Smith said this, like, go out there and play something, like, lay it down. So he starts playing, what's that Jimi Hendrix song?
Manic Depressant.
Manic Depressant. And that's when you went out and played. You listen to the drums. It's the exact drums for that song.
But yeah, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, I think 91 was their year.
There's a crazy album. They're all junked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that album. They were both on, Doug, they were on both of our top 6 American rock and roll bands.
I wish they would make that album over again. Because, like, you know, I have a love-hate relationship with those dudes.
It's understandable.
But that's, like, the first album Anthony Kiedis thought he could sing. I
Well-
wish they would have never made Under the Bridge.
Well, that's a song I can never hear ever again. I don't need to hear it ever again.
Rick Rubin told him, hey, you could sing. Start singing. Great album, though. So many great songs from the beginning to the end. It was like definitely a game changer.
Maybe next one I got on here is Tom Petty, Into the Great Wide Open. I don't know if we need to talk like
Great
a ton
song.
about it.
Great song.
That and
Yeah.
Learning to Fly is my favorite Tom Petty song.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you.
Into the Great Wide Open we're talking about. What a great song
Yeah.
that is.
Tells a story.
It's a story of a rock star. The video was great with Johnny Depp playing the rock star. Just the words of the song tell the story. And that's why Tom Petty was so awesome. He would tell stories in his songs. Great Wide Open, I always thought Tom Petty wrote it about Axl Rose.
You think so?
I don't know. Yeah.
It makes sense. They were pals.
Yeah, it just the way the words go is just a little bit too close to Axl.
I never thought about that, but
Yeah.
now I think about it.
Do you want to talk about Axl?
I'm always ready to talk about
All right,
Axl.
so Guns N' Roses, man, Use Your Illusion 1 and Use Your Illusion 2. I cut school the day these albums came out because I had to have them.
Well, we got you beat. Guns N' Roses did a really small tour before those two albums came out. So my mom let me and Ryan skip school to go down to the Spectrum and camp out for tickets. And that was on a Tuesday. The show was on a Friday. And that was an unbelievable show.
That's good parenting.
Those first two out, those 1 and 2 are unbelievable. To this day, they're very important to me. Everybody thinks they're like overproduced. A couple weeks ago, our boys at Mixtapes and Tasty Cakes, they were rating the Use Your Illusion albums. They had it pretty good. They were trying to make it down to one album. I could never do that because I love both albums so much. I totally disappeared into those albums. I have a great theory. It's so overproduced. Axl's voice is so many layered. So many things are going on. I think because he has such a schizophrenic part of him.
He's a
in
perfectionist.
his mind. And all these different voices that are in his head. And he puts them on tape. It's like, if you listen to something like Don't Cry, there's 3 different voices going on.
And there was 2 versions of Don't Cry,
Yeah.
right? There was one on, was it one on each album?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Shannon Hoon's one of the voices on there.
Yeah,
too.
Shannon Hoon from
Melon.
Blind Melon.
I just think it just shows how much of a lunatic Axl really was.
Do you know the story of why that was 2 separate albums and not a double album?
I think it was because they didn't want to charge the kids. They didn't want to have like me and Doug go out there and have to spend $30 to buy their 2 albums. So what they did was they put 2 of them out separately. You can buy one now and one later. I ran out,
But nobody did that.
Nobody did that.
Everybody bought two.
Yeah.
Well,
both of them.
what happened with me was I went out and bought the second one first because the You Could Be Mine was
Right.
on there and Knocking on Heaven's Door was
Right.
on there.
Right.
And I was so into it, I had to go get the next one on the next day.
And the second one hit number 1. The first one never did. The
Oh,
second
really?
One, the second
Really?
one was a number 1.
I think that was because the You Could Be Mine was
Yeah.
on there
Yeah.
and Knocking
Yeah.
on Heaven's Door.
Yeah.
I mean, it also had Civil War on it.
And Civil War was released prior to that for, like, they had Steven Adler played on. That was the last song they ever played with them because they did it at Farm Aid with Steven Adler. And there was some kind of, like, court thing going on. And Steven Adler wanted to get paid and blah, 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 blah. And, you know,
I always liked the blue one more than the red album.
I
agree
do
with
too,
you.
but there's a couple songs on the first one that I really, really like.
Like,
Yeah.
Dead Horse is a great song.
Dead Horse
That's
is a
on the
great
second one,
song.
right?
Yeah.
Coma's
Yeah.
a great song.
Comb is a great
Yeah.
song. You should play a little bit
Yeah,
of
want
that.
to play a little bit of that? It's really long, but we can.
Axl, man, he was just so deep.
And that song's 10 minutes and 14 seconds long. That's
And
a
it's-
really
it's-
long song.
And it's him talking through the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've heard that song.
They were a great band.
They're still a great band. Let's see if they do anything more.
Ryan, you were talking about the Mixtapes and Tasty Cakes guys mixing both albums down to one good album. Could you even do that?
I can't do that because I love it too much. I need all those songs. I'm still a guy that listens to the album in its completeness. Like I have both 1 and 2 on vinyl, and I listen to it through. I can't listen to Yesterday and not think of the next song that's coming on next. I don't think there's a bad song on any of the albums.
Do you think the fact that it was split up and it was 1 and 2 and they came out at the same time made it more popular? I can't think of another band that did that.
Springsteen did it.
Yeah,
Two
but you're
albums. Oh yeah, Lucky Town and
yeah, but
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses was huge.
Yeah.
Like huge.
A lot of those songs were written before the first album.
shame on me for not knowing that about Springsteen.
Hey,
but
I know a little.
But the
thing here.
90s are also his bad era, his bad decade. But
Like November Rain was written before Appetite for Destruction.
I just think I couldn't make it into one album. Would it make a great album if it was just one? Yeah. But for me, in my life, distraction in life, I needed both of them because I disappeared in those albums. And it had big drums in it, so it really influenced me to play drums. The layering of guitars on there and everything. But I love the Izzy Stradlin songs. I love the Duff McKagan songs. I just love both of those albums. I could not ever put it in one record. It has to be 1 and 2 in its completeness. I just love them. They helped me through life so much.
But what other band could have done that back then? Name one.
and they're another band that, or maybe one of the first bands we're talking about, that MTV absolutely helped them with this. I mean,
Oh my God.
the trio of videos, like November Rain, like those videos, the You Could Be Mine video was everywhere, and it had the clips from Terminator
huge.
in it.
It was the first thing that they showed of Guns N' Roses in a couple years. You know, it was like, oh my God, they're coming back. Here they come. And man, they came back with those 2 huge albums.
Like you said, like MTV helped them out. They helped MTV.
Yeah,
You know,
that's true. Right.
They really did. Like they're talking about a monster band. Like besides another huge band that came out with an album that year, nobody was bigger than them.
The opening drums on You Could Be Mine, that is like just
It's so...
kick the door down. We are here. We are going to rock out.
That was like one of the first things I learned how to play on drums.
Was it?
It's one of my go-to fills when I have to do like some kind of solo or something.
Rock on, man. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a good go-to. But yeah, Guns N' Roses were king of 91.
Yeah. So the last one I had on this list right here is Metallica.
Wow.
The Black Album, which is like, again,
Last.
that's the last one that we're talking about.
Last but not least.
I mean, this is the album that flung them into the mainstream, right?
No.
But this is an album that a lot of those guys didn't like. Like when the Black Album came out, they lost a lot of fans. They got a lot of fans. They gained a lot of fans, but they lost a lot of fans.
I was already a fan by the time the Black Album came out. And I really loved the Black Album the first time I heard it. I remember hearing Enter Sandman the first time. I'm like, whoa, this is better than one.
Really?
Yeah, because it was just that drum intro was huge.
Going back, you know, think about how I said For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge was my Van Halen album. The Black Album was my Metallica album. That was the first one I actually went out and the day it came out, bought it.
They really worked their asses off to make that album.
There was a lot of money invested in it.
Yeah,
There's a lot of, rightfully so. You know, like I said, like a lot of people didn't like that album.
You know, everybody knows how much everybody hates it. You know, whatever. I said it in our podcast before. I think they're posers, the ones that say they hate it. I think they're the posers. I have it on vinyl. I've been listening for the last couple weeks. And it's a monster album.
I don't disagree with you.
It's a monster album. Sad but true.
I don't disagree with you.
Dude, The Unforgiven is so underrated. It's the guitar solo in Unforgiven is probably one of the best guitar solos
Of his
ever.
career. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
You know,
his passion, everything is in it.
They brought it live, the Black Album, but they really took a long time to record it. There was a documentary made about, it was called A Year and a Half of Metallica, and they had the video showing of how they made the Black Album. And it showed them how they were like almost like fist fighting each other in the studio.
It said it's the frustration in
The
there.
tension,
Yeah.
it all added up and it made this great album.
Then, like, you got a major heavy song on there. It's like Sad But True. That is like a rattle shaking, inside bit busting song. Wherever I may roam, you have some like heavy songs on there.
That's my favorite one. You know,
Yeah,
I always
that's
loved,
that song I never get tired of.
yeah, I always love that video. I love any touring video. Like,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
showing a band on tour.
Yeah, like The Struggle Within. Great song off that
Great
album.
song.
Great
Yeah.
intro from like West Side Story. You know,
Yeah, why don't we play a little bit of that? We got it on our playlist. To me, this is the album that started the hell.
You know, I was in Guitar Center a couple weeks ago. Doug needed to buy something. And I turn around and I see this young kid, and he's playing a Metallica riff. He's playing like Enter Sandman, you know? And I turned around and I was like, this is great to see you, man, playing some Metallica. And I think the Black Album is a great introduction to any kid wanting to play the guitar or wanting to get into heavy metal.
I agree.
You know, if I was a teacher and a kid said to me, I want to know what heavy metal is about, I give them the Black Album.
That's a cool perspective to talk about the musicianship. They're another band too, like did MTV. I mean, the Enter Sandman video was everywhere again.
Everywhere.
I haven't seen it in years, and I can still remember
We
it.
were in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they have Kurt Hammett's guitar from the video on the wall, and I was like, oh my God! All the time that I've seen that in the video, it's like right in front of me.
Even the old man in the video, they had T-shirts with his face on it. I'm not saying it's a bad album. All I'm saying is they lost a lot of those hardcore fans.
Well, all those hardcore fans, they got all the other kids. The kids
Right.
No, like I said, they lost some fans, but they gained like 10 times more over.
they put a huge concert on in '91 in Moscow, and like half the country showed up to watch Metallica play.
One thing Ryan and I were talking about before you showed up today, Bruce, is that like, you know, how much the Black Album is not liked. They're not liked. You know, it's kind of like, oh, you know, our heroes aren't heavy anymore. Like the year later, that's when Vulgar Display of Power came out. So these guys from Pantera heard this album and they were not happy with their favorite band, like making, quote, a pop album. So it influenced them to write heavier music, which became Vulgar Display of Power. I read that today on the way over.
Interesting.
I think it had a huge inspiration on Generation.
Absolutely.
Just seeing that kid play the guitar and seeing Metallica still relevant, it's going to be like Metallica and the Black Album's going to go down like Zeppelin did with Zeppelin 2. It's always going to be a reference to heavy metal. It should be. It's the greatest heavy metal album ever made.
We said in one of the other episodes that they're the Rolling Stones of
They
heavy
are.
metal now.
I was
right?
going to say that again.
Yeah,
They are.
totally.
They are.
Yeah.
Well, we went and seen them, and parents are holding up their kids saying, "Sad but true." Yeah.
But then, you know, before that, everybody thought that Guns N' Roses was going to be the Rolling Stones. But nope, it's going to be Metallica. It's always going to be Metallica. They're one of my favorite, going back, greatest American rock and roll bands of all time, and rightfully so. And that album had a lot to do with it.
I think another band that had a really interesting album in '91 opened for you too, right? And that tour that you guys were talking about?
On the Octone Baby tour, I didn't go, but I never forgot the name of the band that opened up for them, and it was Primus.
Primus sucks.
Yeah,
Sailing the Seas of Cheese.
You two always brought out like who is the next big thing coming out, and they saw Primus, and they were like, "This band is different. Let's have them on the tour."
Me and Ryan saw that Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey movie. That was the first time I saw Primus. I think we saw it in the movie theater. It was one of those experiences that changed. I literally, like a week later, bought See a Cheese album, and it changed my whole idea of what music is supposed to be. I never heard it was from outer space. Just Les Claypool is an absolute genius. The whole band's genius. You get those three guys together, three guys to make that sound. They're weird dudes.
He's an amazing bass player just alone.
Yes,
But his eccentricity
good word.
just makes like they're so weird. He's been in like 1,000 different side projects and weird things that he does. I love Primus. I had the same reaction the first time I heard. I heard
what is
that
this?
album.
And I need more of it in my life.
Yes,
You know?
I had this album on cassette and was like, "What is this?"
Man.
Like Tommy the Cat, Jerry Race Car
Yeah.
Driver.
Sergeant
Yeah.
Baker is my favorite
I
song
love
on that
Sergeant
album.
Baker. Love that song.
Play a little Jerry's a race car driver because I think it's so different. The bass is just so
Dude,
the way he plays the bass.
I never heard anything like it, and I don't know if I started playing at that point. Seriously, probably not. It just how you do that.
I never heard a guy play bass like this.
I've been playing for 30 years, and I can't play that.
Jerry was a race car driver. He drove so goddamn fast. Never did win no checker flag.
I don't even know how he makes that sound. Do you? I mean, Doug, you're a bass player.
Yeah, well, like I still can't do it, but he taps like Eddie Van Halen. Like nobody else does that. Like I'm sure, like Victor Wooten, all these guys, like these respectable bass players now. But it's punk rock. It was skate music. It was like
So instead of like the slap bass, he's the tap bass.
he's tapping it. He's tapping with his finger on the fretboard, like Eddie Van Halen. And
Crazy.
It's crazy how the mind works. So, like he didn't invent it, but he did it on bass.
And they're still making music. I mean, he's done some really weird shit too,
But
man.
one
yeah,
album-
he's done the Oysterhead
Yeah, that's what I was just
Yeah,
going to say.
yeah,
That's with
yeah.
like
Yeah.
with Trey Anastasio.
Trey and Stuart
Stuart
Copeland
Copeland.
from the Police.
But he just did another album with Sean Lennon that I think, Bruce, you like also?
Yeah, yeah.
It is fantastic. Like, it's the best thing I've heard in years. Like,
Yeah, a lot of his one-off stuff. Like he'll come out with a band and just do one album and then
Yeah.
disappear.
The Holy Macro album was great.
Loved it. Yeah, we were working in the music store when that was out all the time. Henry Rollins is on one of those songs.
Yeah.
but one thing that I'll always be jealous. Well, two things of Ryan I'll be jealous of. He saw Prince.
Let's say I got the bigger dick.
Yeah. That's not true. Ryan got to see Prince, and then he got to see Ryan see Primus do the Willy Wonka project.
Oh, really cool.
It was perfect. He came out, he did a bunch of like great hits like Jerry Race Car Driver and whatever, and then he took 20-minute intermission and he opened up again and it was the Candyland. And he came out and did all those crazy Willy Wonka songs. If you ever really want to trip out and listen,
It's a good time. It's great.
It's. I think it worked better seeing it live than it does looking at on an album.
I think it's great. I didn't see it, but you get a different perspective
The
listening
visual
to it.
thing of it was
Yeah.
amazing.
And I'll go back. I said this before. I don't really like visuals with my music. I really liked not like a concert. I'm sure it was like I definitely would have wanted to see that, but I love the visuals of what I have, of what that scene is in my head. Just listening to it because it's so out there. It's scarier than the actual recordings of those songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a scary movie, man. That's scary stuff.
Primus, great band. They're totally, in 1991, we were ready for them. We needed something funky,
Yeah.
more funky. We needed more funky bands, and they were it.
They've never been like a huge like mainstream band, but I
No.
feel like
That's great, though.
where
I don't want
that's
them
where
to
they-
be.
That's where they started the.
But they also did the South Park song.
Yeah. Yes. You're
So
right.
they're everybody knows who Primus is,
Yeah.
especially from that generation.
But I feel like
I
that's
don't want
kind of-
them to be big, man.
No.
That's cool.
All right, so that's it with Primus. Another established artist that we didn't talk about that had an album that came out in 1991 was Ozzy Osbourne and No More Tears.
91 was when I first started playing bass, and that beginning dun-dun-dun-dun-dun is probably one of the first things I learned how to play, and I thought it was just like the coolest thing in the world. That might be my Ozzy album. That might have been like the first album I really like. Ryan was really into like No Rest of the Wicked, and I enjoyed those albums. But when No More Tears came out, from beginning to end, I love that album.
That's the last album with Zach Wilde too, right?
No, Zach was with them for a while.
Was
after
he?
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
He
Okay,
did like
that's-
Perry Mason and all
He's
that.
been
Okay.
on. He's
Yeah.
been off and on
Osmosis.
with them for 30 years.
Gotcha. I remember they split at one point. I couldn't
Yeah.
remember if that was then or
No,
later.
he wrote a lot of songs. Lemmy wrote a song on that album.
did?
Hellraiser, the song was called, and it was also recorded again by Lemmy, and he made it for one of the Hellraiser movies.
Oh, really? Rock on.
Did
Yeah.
you ever hear it, Bruce?
No.
It's good.
No, I've never heard it.
It's good.
Yeah, obviously, "Mama, I'm Coming Home" was a huge hit, and it was great to have Ozzy in the charts.
Yeah.
You know, it was great to still have like this rock and roll icon out there stirring the pot up. Remember, he was like, "No more tears. There's going to be no more tours."
Yeah.
The "No More Tours"
Right.
gimmick.
Yeah.
30
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
Like Mr. Tinker Train is the opener to that album. That's a great song. Like I'm looking at all this Desire. That's a great song. Time After Time. That's a great tune. You know, AVH is a great song. Road to Nowhere. This is a great album. Beginning
It's well
to end.
produced.
Yeah, it is very well produced.
It's not super heavy. It's not like
It's not a pop album, but
No.
it was like at that time it was like they had a goal and it was to be on MTV. It was commercial. It was record executives because there's money in Ozzy. Still a name. He's still a name.
a marketable
Yeah, absolutely.
music commodity.
and that's going back to like think of the world that you're like. Okay, we didn't even talk about Van Halen right now. You know, that was a Pepsi commercial. Everything was marketable. Rock and roll was like really, really big, still big back then.
Yeah.
Another great metal band in 91 that was celebrating their 10-year anniversary was Motley Crue. They started in 81 and they were celebrating their 10-year accomplishment. The song Primal Scream.
Great song.
On their Decade to Decadence.
Decade
right?
of Decadence. And, you know, I remember sitting there, man, this band's been around for so long. They have a greatest hits album out already. You know, and unfortunately, it was the last album or the last song that they would do with Vince Neil for a long time. And in my opinion, this is one of the best Motley Crue songs there is.
I agree with you.
I agree.
Let's play a little bit of it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Motley, man. They were putting the greatest hits out in 91.
Is that the only song they recorded for that album?
No, there was a few other songs.
Oh wait,
on
they
there.
did Anarchy in the UK, didn't
did
they? And that was
Anarchy.
horrible. Oh, that was horrible.
And that Primal Scream song, that's another one that I think just stands up. I think it's
Totally.
still sounds like a modern song.
I couldn't believe Motley Crue when they broke up.
Yeah.
Right after that song was a hit.
So, what else you guys want to talk about? Ryan, you were talking a little bit about like what else was going on in rock and roll music.
It just seemed like rock and roll getting so stale. Rock and roll was getting light. What I mean that is being like unplugged. At that time, there was a trend going on. Everybody was going unplugged, just not on the MTV show. But, you know, you had bands like Extreme doing More Than Words. You had bands, Mr. Big is With You. You had Tesla. They had a hit with Signs.
Firehouse, Don't Treat Me Bad was 30 years old. That had a big acoustic guitar.
Silent Acidity. That had a huge acoustic
Queensryche.
And
sound on it.
that song was everywhere.
Now, a hair metal band made one of the biggest albums of 91. Now it's Skid Row.
Yeah, Slave the
That was
Grind.
a huge album. And
Yeah,
That's
maybe
our
we should-
best album.
Yeah, maybe we should acknowledge that before we wrap up and move on. That I love that album.
I love
What's
and
that?
I was kind of surprised to hear both of you guys say that too, because I always thought that was after they were done,
No,
over the hump
no,
with hair metal.
no.
That album still rocks.
Dude,
Well,
it's still
Slave to the
today.
Grind.
Monkey Business,
Yeah.
Slave to the Grind. I was listening to that the other night.
I mean, it's a tough album. But, you know, they were still...
Quicksand Jesus is on there.
Play a little Monkey Business.
Yeah.
A little. I still love that song. Maybe I'm perpetually
No, that
stuck
movie's-
in the
dude.
90s, but
Nope. That album is great.
We saw them on that tour, and Pantera opened up for them.
First time we didn't even know what Pantera. We didn't know
Pantera
what
opened for Skid
yeah,
Row.
dude,
Yeah,
we bought
that's-
tickets that day at the Spectrum.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We didn't even know what a mosh pit was. We
Skid
didn't-
Row played the Spectrum. Wait, Skid Row played the Spectrum?
With Pantera.
Skid Row, a headline at the Spectrum as Pantera opened up for them.
Oh wow, that's so weird to hear that you guys say that about this album, because I always thought that Skid Row And maybe I live in a very small bubble of Skid Row. I thought they hit their peak with like
No.
18 in Life and I Remember You, and then they were done. And this was the album that had like the little cutout in the corner that you would get in like the bargain bin.
No.
I didn't realize that everybody like
No.
loved this album. Maybe I'm doing a disservice to
I
the
love
Skid Row.
Save the Grind.
Dude, this album debuted #1. It was the first heavy metal album to debut #1 on the Billboard charts.
Shame on me because they're another Jersey band.
Yeah,
They were one of the best.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
especially
that's-
off that
I-
album.
I'm woefully uneducated on my Skid Row. I need to brush up. And considering that I have like 15 pages of notes in front of me as you're doing this, I clearly spent my energy and time is misdirected. So,
No, they're just something to mention that they were a heavy band.
all right, cool. So we talked about all these really, really big albums that came out from U2 and Metallica and Guns N' Roses. I think it's really important to also keep in mind that at this time you still have bands like Poison still had like Something to Believe In was still on the chart in early '91. Warrant is still on the chart. Vanilla Ice is still around. Like this hair metal, this cheesy stuff is still all there. But when we come back after the commercial break, we're going to talk about some of the new bands that start coming up, and they just wipe the entire board clean, and we just start over. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back. This episode of The Prisoners of Rock and Roll is brought to you by McCusker's Tavern, located at 17th and Shunk Streets in South Philadelphia. McCusker's Tavern has been in business for more than 50 years, making it the oldest bar west of Broad Street and a city known for its neighborhood watering holes. Minutes from the sports stadium, McCusker's is a great place to stop in for a few beers before or after a game or a concert. There's a reason why everyone from Philadelphia Magazine to Playboy have ranked it as one of the best dive bars in the city. Music is such an important part of McCusker's Tavern that we're actually recording this episode from there right now. They're currently closed due to the pandemic, but miss everyone and hope to see them soon. In the meantime, check them out on Facebook. That's McCusker's Tavern. All right, everybody, welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. So we're going to keep on rocking here and talking about how the music industry has changed in 1991. Before we dive back in and start talking about some of the bands, I want to talk a little bit about how music was measured. And I thought this was really interesting as I was doing my research. So before 1991, Billboard, the way they used to track music was they would call music stores and just say, hey, what are you selling? And they would call radio stations and go, hey, what's hot? And there's no other way around this. People would just lie. You know, radio stations would just promote albums that were on sale or they had a lot of inventory, and radio DJs would just talk about things that were being pushed by the record labels. But then in 91, Billboard actually started changing it, and they were getting data right from music stores. So like when Sam Goody would sell something, the numbers would go right from like the register electronically to them. So there was no more lying and there was no more BS. The only thing that was different about this was Tower Records wasn't a part of this whole electronic thing. So everything that Tower sold, which was like the second biggest music company
Really?
in the country, you didn't get that data. But the way that this stuff was tracked, all that crap that we talked about at the beginning, the Rico Suave and Vanilla Ice, that's all goes away.
Oh, man.
And some of this stuff we're going to talk about in the second half of the show, all this different kind of music comes like flowing in. It's a vacuum of bad music, and all this new stuff flows in hip hop and country, and some really kick-ass rock and roll music comes in because of this. And this was something I never even knew about till we started diving into this episode. So that's my music nerding out kind of stuff. I found one of the roots behind it.
No, it changed everything.
So-
You know, you would like you said, you would see NWA being number one. You would see Skid Row being number one. You see what the fans were buying, like when the system started.
But I always went into a record store and asked, like, you always had like guys you went to the store, like, who you like I would never heard 311. Like, this is completely off subject, but like 311 Ryan's like, you need to hear this. So I always wanted to speak to the people working in the record store. Hopefully they weren't so burned out at the time and it just became a job, but really respected their opinion on what I should be listening to, or like, have you heard this? Or, hey, I'm looking for something new.
I was more about the criticizing what people bought.
Yeah. But that said, it's not all just the fact the way that they measured the stuff that changed it. There's just some really, really awesome stuff that comes out. This is the year that grunge music gets its start.
Yes, it does. I mean, you had this whole grunge Seattle thing. It was going on before Nirvana and Pearl Jam. You had Soundgarden. You had Alice in Chains. They were on MTV regularly. It wasn't called grunge at the time. They were on Headbangers Ball. It definitely was a new sound that was taking over the hair band sound.
But then you had that one day when the buzz clips starting to appear on MTV. It's like, oh, what's this buzz clip thing? And I remember the first time I heard Smells Like Teen Spirit.
I had totally forgotten about buzz clips.
And I literally saw the video, heard this music that instantly changed who I was. I literally got up off my couch the second the video was over and went down to my local record store and bought Nevermind and listened to that thing until it wore out.
What were the big grunge albums that came out in 91?
Nevermind.
Nevermind by Nirvana.
10.
10 by Pearl Jam. Bad Motorfinger by Soundgarden.
Sure.
Temple the Dog.
I was going to say you have to throw Temple the Dog
Temple
in
the
there.
Dog came out.
Yeah.
Mud. I'm personally not a Mudhoney fan.
But they turned some heads with
But
that.
they were a part of that early scene. They had an album, Every Good Boy Deserves Fudge. And Alice in Chains, their album, Facelift, came out in 90. Are they a grunge band? Sometimes they're considered grunge, sometimes they're metal.
They were from
But
Seattle.
Some of their single, like Man in the Box, spills into 91.
I was never a huge Alice in Chains fan. I got to be completely honest. And my opinion of that album, I'm going to get a lot of hate about this. I literally thought they were a leftover type hair metal band.
Yeah, you said that before.
Kind of made crossover. Even though they probably had the material that they wanted to put out, the record company was probably like, no, we want this.
But those other bands, they release everything. And I mean, what you just said about that, hearing that song, I think we all experienced that. I think everybody our age experienced that. Who was into rock and roll had that experience with that song.
It Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's our generation's version of like hearing the Beatles.
Or The Who.
Or it's that moment like you remember hearing that, and then everything that you listened to after was different than what you heard before.
Even Brett Michaels said, like, he heard it and he said, well, we're all out of a job. And it happened within a year. Music changed in a year. Nirvana is, considered the ones that did it, but Pearl Jam, they're the ones still around. They're the ones still selling out stadiums. They were my number one American rock and roll band. They are my Who of my generation. They are the ones that took that journey with you through your life and still going through the journey, even though their music is not great these days. They just released an album, and I think hopefully they have better things to come. But that 10 album, from beginning to end.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic. And I mean, those albums come out and they don't gain a lot of popularity in 91. I think I saw that like Smells Like Teen Spirit is number 17 by the end of the year. But 92 is when they really take off.
When 10 came out, it sat on the record pile for a few months. Took a while for it to catch on. Nirvana, when it first came out, they automatically hit the record charts. The first week Nevermind came out, they sold 6,000 copies. That's a lot for a little punk rock band. They had success immediately. A band like Pearl Jam, 10 to me was the album. Like, I was never a Nirvana fan. I can't help it. They just never touched me. Like everybody else changed their lives. It didn't do anything for me. 10 changed everything for me. I had it before everybody. I wore the T-shirt before everybody. I just thought they were a way better band than Nirvana. I never even bought the Nirvana album until this year for the first time in my life, and I bought it on vinyl. And it's become my favorite vinyl to listen to. It sounds unbelievable. These albums sound the way that they do is because they were recorded on tape. This was before they were doing
Digital.
Yeah.
This is a great point. You mentioned this, and then we were talking about our notes for the show.
Yeah, it's like I think that's why these albums sound so well, these classic albums, because they were all made on tape. It was before they start compressing everything on computers.
The recording technology has changed as well.
Yeah.
Right around now too. Like I mentioned a couple times, having some of these albums on cassette, and CDs are starting to become popular.
Yeah.
The computer technology is not here yet.
Yeah.
No.
Like, I agree with you. Like, just a layer and layering and layering of these albums when they were making them, they're wearing out the tape. Especially on that 10 album, there's so many like hidden things, and I've never listed. I'll be honest with you, I never listed it on vinyl, but if I did, I would hear things I never heard before.
Well, everything on vinyl you listen to, you hear things. Yeah. Like I said, I never even loved that Nirvana album until a year ago when I bought it on vinyl. I think that's the way it was supposed to be listened to. I mean, I think it's my favorite vinyl to listen to because it was made from the tape.
I'm really surprised to hear you say that because you were never, like you said, you admit it. You were never a huge fan of them.
But
in that album.
It's my favorite album to listen to.
Good
right
for you.
now.
I wish I could listen to it for the first time like that. You know,
Interesting.
I just hated the hype. I hated
yeah,
the whole...
I could see that. Like, it was everywhere. Like, Sears starts selling, like, flannel and this and that, and, like, the whole grunge look. It got out of control. And, like, Doc Martens and...
But 91 was, like, the runway of the beginning of what became the Seattle scene.
A lot of this stuff, like you said, sat on the shelf for a while. And if somebody like Pearl Jam came out now, if you don't hit it quickly, like you don't have that runway now, right? Like
no, there's no runway.
You don't get a year and a half to hit it big.
No, there's still a platform, but it's YouTube. It's like I can't even pretend that I do understand how it's made. I'm still trying to figure it out. It's just crazy how grunge became such a pop culture in such a short time. Everybody started growing their hair long. Everybody started wearing flannel. Everybody started wearing chain wallets. And they said, like, this is the way we dress because we're poor.
Right.
We're poor.
Right, but
it's cold and rainy where we live.
But this is the stuff that comes in that all these other bands are on the board and somebody puts their hands on it and just wipes them all off. Like you said, Bret Michaels going like, well, we're done.
Because it made everything seem irrelevant and meaningless.
They made everybody look stupid overnight.
Grunge for the people our age, grunge was our punk music.
Sure.
Right? Like music is getting lighter. There's no meaning to it. And like for those of us that are like we've had enough and we're the kind of jaded kids, like we want something that means a little bit more. This was our answer to it.
But then it also introduced us to a whole bunch of other bands, like the Ramones. If it wasn't for Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam, I probably would never have discovered the Ramones so early. Like, not early in my life, in my teens, but then you got Neil Young. I never listened to Neil Young back then.
I mean, Ryan, I wrote it down when you just said it. You called Nirvana a little punk band from Seattle.
Yeah,
you call them a grunge band, little punk band.
No, they were a little punk band.
Right, and
there was no such thing as grunge.
Some somebody from MTV probably
repackaged them.
Yeah,
right. And if you say that, if it goes back to punk, I'm like, well, Pearl Jam's not a punk band, and Seattle Soundgarden is more of a heavy metal band. But somebody took the Venn diagram of music and put where these guys are all together, and
marketing scam.
Yeah, but it's really interesting. This kind of became the music of the people our age when we were kids. We had enough, and we needed our rebellious music, and this was it.
Yeah, we had enough of like CNC Music Factory and Boyz II Men and Vanilla Ice, and we needed something real.
Right.
And even hair bands like Firehouse and
Extreme and all those.
Extreme's a great band, though.
They are.
A great
He's
band.
an amazing guitar. Yeah. Nuno Betancourt's a great guitar player, but that cheesy acoustic.
Warrant.
We talked before about the heavy political stuff of the 60s and kind of swung over to the party music of the 80s, and now it's coming back the other way, and it's like, well, no, we've had enough of this glam metal light garbage.
But you still had bands out there like prior to that, like Social Distortion was around.
Yeah,
before 91.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
sure. You're always going to have, you're always going to have those undercurrents.
Yeah.
MTV was really weird in 91. You would have like them playing Pearl Jam or Nirvana, but then them playing the Scorpions, Wind of Change. You still had these bands hanging on, the hair bands. They're still hanging on. But companies were still trying to marketing these bands. Like you're saying, like Extreme was like a hair band to you. They weren't to me. They were a funk band. They just got caught up in that time of the hair band series. A band like Tesla, I never thought they were a hair band. They just got caught up in that years. You know who gets caught up in all the hair band years is the Black Crowes.
Sure.
They still get compared to being because they came out in the 90s. And they're more of a jam band now than than anything.
I saw them as like the next Skinner Southern rock.
I thought of more than that, man. I thought they
Yeah, I was way into the Black Crowes.
Yes.
I always see
Southern
that-
Harmony.
I've been watching the Black Crowes all week. Chris Robinson's one of the greatest frontmen ever.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He's an original diva, man. He is.
I've seen them a handful of times. They always put on a good show.
You go out there with the feathers and everything like that.
Yeah, all the
The boas.
How did other artists, like the Guns N' Roses and all these hair bands, like how did they react? I know we talked previously before we started the show about Axl and Kurt Cobain. So Axl liked Nirvana going into
and Nirvana didn't like. Yeah,
They
Axl.
were like the little punk rock kids. They're like, I don't want anything to do with your big band.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we want to be little punk rockers. I get it. I get why they didn't want to do anything with Guns N' Roses.
it was an interesting story I came across doing the research. So I guess they do the Axl Rose. They do the video for "Don't Cry." He's wearing a Nirvana hat. And then they ask Nirvana to open for them on that tour. Kurt Cobain gives an interview and he says, well, we're not a typical band like Guns N' Roses that has absolutely nothing to say of meaning. And then you can't trash can Axl Rose in the media, and then it's on.
Yeah.
And I guess you fast forward to like one of the MTV Awards, and Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love they're sitting in the seats with their daughter, Frances Bean, and Axl Rose walks by. Courtney Love says something to him, and Axl Rose turns around and tells Kurt Cobain, like, tell your wife to shut her mouth or I'm going to punch her in the face, or some
That sounds about right.
some
Yeah.
very typical Axl Rose statement. And then there's all kinds of shit like backstage afterward. Like the two bands are going after each other.
It's a big ego fest. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because, like, okay, even till today, you have Guns N' Roses on one side and you have Nirvana. They are two different sides of spectrums, and both bands are still iconic to this day.
There was like some pushing and some shoving behind backstage and all kinds of just other stuff. And it was just one of those things of two different eras clashing in music.
It's like the old heads fighting the young heads.
Right.
And Ryan, you were saying Dave Grohl was just happy just to be there and loving every second of it.
No, I read an article and he was saying Axl, his thing going with Kurt, and then Duff was doing his thing with Chris, and then Dave Grohl was like, I was 21, I was having the greatest time of my life, and I was made for chaos. Yeah, they were jealous. They saw it coming. No, I mean, I remember seeing like that Nirvana Teen Spirit for the first time. Maybe it didn't do anything to me, like, holy shit, this changed my life. But I saw the change coming. I was like, this is going to knock the wind out of music. And it did. And they opened the doors for a lot of bands for years to come.
But then after that, these record executives were signing up every band they could possibly get. Oh, you're from Seattle? Record deal.
I remember like Queensryche here and like, oh, they're from Seattle. Like what they sound nothing
No,
like
like hard-
anything to do
yeah,
with that.
like-
Operatic metal.
No.
Nothing to do
No.
with the grunge sound.
No.
But you sure as hell heard that they were from Seattle though.
Yeah.
Another rainy night. You get that? Like rains in Seattle.
rains in
They'll buy
Seattle.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a movement. It was an absolute movement. It was just like, we're kind of tired of this scene, and I've been waiting patiently, even 30 years later, for it to happen again. And it needs to happen now more than anything.
Hopefully there's a kid out there listening to Nirvana album.
Getting their inspiration.
Yeah.
But I don't see it happening.
Well,
No,
hope I'm wrong.
nobody saw it happening before Nirvana
Yeah.
either,
Yeah.
right? Everyone thought there was going to be long hair music and Uncle Tom's Cabin by Warrant.
Nah.
and- all right, cool. You got anything else on grunge? You want to move on to something else?
I really love that Temple of the Dog album. They made that in tribute to Andy Wood for
Mother Love Bone?
Yeah. It was a great album. That had more of an effect on me than the Nirvana album did. It really did. I can't say how much I love that album. I was so lucky to see Temple of the Dog at concert at Madison Square Garden before Chris Cornell died. That was an amazing show.
Hunger Strike, that was like a big song. Like how Ryan's saying Nevermind was not on his radar. He wasn't listening to it, but Temple Dog. That album was not on my radar. I probably never listened to that album probably up to maybe 10 years ago.
But we always had different tastes.
Yeah.
Like, I had enough of Pearl Jam by the time Versus came out.
Yeah, you did.
I had enough of the whole scene and everything like that. Everybody was fucking miserable through the whole grunge era. You know, and that's why I went the opposite way of seeing bands like Fish
Yeah.
and the Grateful
Yeah.
Dead.
Yeah.
is because I didn't like the whole bummer of grunge music.
Yeah, and I didn't catch up to you until maybe about 10 years. Well, not with Fish. I've been going since 93.
94.
94. Sorry. Got to get it right. But I'm kind of with you there now at 44. Like, just want some good times and feel good about something. And, hey, man, maybe everybody's starting to listen to some more Dead and Fish in the world today. But
Unfortunately, it's chaotic out there in the world right now. It's a more of a Nevermind kind of world than a Grateful Dead kind of world right now.
I think people are listening to too much country music, but that's just my opinion.
Alice in Chains is my favorite band out of that grunge era.
Really?
Yeah.
Good for you.
I really like them. I know we can debate that another time.
No, but I think one of my favorite albums is their Unplugged album.
Yeah.
I think that's if I had to say one of my favorite albums, Unplugged albums, absolutely Alice in Chains.
And that and Dirt might be my favorite albums out of the grunge era. If I had to pick one of the three that started in 91, I'd pick Soundgarden. The heaviness, his voice, his high pitched voice with that really heavy driving guitar, that just does it for me.
Unfortunately, we lost him, but he was still relevant up until he decided to leave us. And you think about like bands like Pearl Jam and this and that. He's still more relevant than Pearl Jam, and they're still as a band. And he would go out there and do his own thing. He'd go out there and do his solo thing, and he did that thing with the guys from Rage Against the Machine and all that. He really dipped his finger in different paints, And I guess that's the idea of what the original idea of grunge. Like, let's just try something different. And I'm sure there's a million other grunge bands that we totally forgot about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
There's tons and tons of them.
Yeah, I mean, like, we started talking about things that just came out in 91, and we just kept on talking about bands and what they've done through their careers. It's funny how shows can turn out to be that way. 1991, it was just a big diverse of music. MTV is such a big part of what was cool. And
absolutely.
And they did it again with the grunge era. They totally manipulated a whole generation into buying flannel.
Yeah, they told you it was cool.
They told you what was cool. MTV, I don't know how they did it. They got these bands to make these multi-million-dollar videos, and they would play them for free. Like, MTV wouldn't pay them anything to play it. But, like, Guns N' Roses is dropping $250,000 to make a video. Oh, and just hoping that they play your video.
Guns N' Roses, like, they're going to play their video. And, like, we're going to play it until you like it.
But that's a great point, Ryan, because you heard all this sort of how much that video cost.
Yeah.
When they made that video for November Rain, right? Like, how expensive it was and how long it was. And
the record companies the one put all the money out, and MTV's like, well, we're not going to pay you that. We're going to play it. You're lucky that we play it for you.
Well, they helped each other.
There's a lot of things like that.
They helped each other.
Real quick, I kind of want to touch on the way that music is being measured changed, how other types of music rose to the top of the charts. And then maybe we can just kind of run down this like random list of albums that turned 30. And if you guys have an opinion on any of them, I'd love to hear them.
Cool.
All right, cool. So, one, we talked about Slave to the Grind by Skid Row. First metal album to hit number one. So this is really weird that this is the first year a hip-hop album, a country album, and heavy metal album all go number one. I suspect it has to be because of the way things are being tracked has changed. So nobody's in control anymore. The people are now...
They have their voice.
Right. We talked about Slave to the Grind. The other one that goes is Garth Brooks. He has an album that debuts. It hit Rope in the Wind or whatever.
Was that his first album?
I don't think so.
Was it Thunderstruck or...
No, that's AC/DC.
Yeah.
He has an album. It debuts at number one. I'm not a Garth Brooks fan.
Neither am I.
So, all right. We're done with him. The other one is NWA. So, NWA hits number one in June of 91. It's the first hip-hop album to ever go number one. It goes platinum in a week.
Which album is it? What song or album is it?
Niggas for Life.
Okay.
You knew that. You just wanted to hear me say that.
Yeah, I did. I did.
But NWA makes that gangster hardcore legit. Like,
Sure.
it is number one.
It's marketable.
Yeah.
I am sure that people were scared.
Sure
that
they
this
were. That's why,
music was-
yeah.
I mean, people in suburbia were locking
Right.
their doors.
That's why it's sold, though. That's
Right.
why it's sold.
But after NWA hits number one, here's a handful of hip hop artists to come out and have huge hits that year. After that, Cypress Hill,
Nice.
like their
Yeah,
debut
big band.
album.
Nice.
Brother Just Killed a Man. Maybe we
Yeah,
can
play a
just,
little bit of that.
like we can play a little bit of hip hop here.
That's punk rock, too. I don't care what anybody says.
It's another one of them old funky Cypress Hill things. You know what I'm saying? And it goes like this.
Hey, don't mess up. I want you passing. You're missing the hooter of the funky Buddha. I load of your fucked up.
And nobody rapped like him. Like
That-
his voice is distinct.
Yeah, Be Real's the real thing.
Yeah.
The dude is punk rock. Like,
He
It
is.
is.
Well, I always said musicians use what around them to make music. The black community had turntables. They took turntables and made it into an instrument. They made a different beat going on with a scratch and a microphone on top of that. To me, the DJ with two tables and a mixer, that's an instrument.
Sure it is.
You mean that's just as much as an instrument a drum set is. You just can't sit down and play the drums. I bet you could do it right now. Go ahead, sit down. You no way you could do it.
Yeah, sure.
It's the same thing with two turntables and a mixer. There's no way you could do that. The hip hop was so diverse even in 91. You had Cypress Hill coming out, but then you had Naughty by Nature coming out doing something.
Right. OPP was a hit.
Yeah.
And that's still that kind of like
That had
party. It's faster. It's hard to. I can't
I thought
explain.
it was party music. Like, you down with OPP?
Yeah.
You know me?
Well, he's
Yeah.
great. He's great, though.
Yeah, Tretch.
Yeah.
Hip hop was happening in 91. Yo, MTV Raps was on every day. Big Daddy Kane was still around them days.
That light stuff, like Tone Loc came out with an album that year, and I looked up how it performed, and it did terribly.
Yeah.
Yeah. 'cause
Compared
he was
to the
done.
one before that.
Yeah, he was done,
that-
though.
The Humpty Dance
Yeah,
and all that,
stupid.
all that, like, you say she's just a friend, that really light
yeah.
stuff is going away, because now NWA's here.
Well, do you feel that, okay, Cypress Hill, though, do you think they're like the quote Nirvana that make everything that look, because we all listen to NWA, but what Cypress Hill did kind of made everything look stupid and everything kind of went forward.
Yeah.
I agree with you, but I'm going to say something different.
Go ahead.
In 1991, Tupac's first song came out.
There you
Yep,
go.
he's on my
Yeah,
list, too.
Brenda's Got a Baby.
There you go.
Now, nothing was more
Nope.
real
Okay.
than that song.
You're
like,
right.
yeah, Cypress Hill was doing a funky thing with their voices and everything like that. But here comes Tupac
Yep.
talking about what really is going on in the
Right.
streets.
He's talking about, like, social issues
yeah.
and...
right off the bat, and
Yeah.
look what Tupac became. He was the
Yeah.
punk rock.
Yeah, you're
he
right.
was the punk rock.
You're absolutely right.
Some other bands that came out in 91, like De La Soul. De La Soul is dead. The Source called that one of the
That was
100
a
best
great
rap albums
album.
of all time.
We saw De La Soul. They opened up for Beastie Boys at one time.
Very cool.
They were unbelievable.
Gangstar, Step in the Arena, IGN.com called that the greatest hip-hop album of all time. I really like that album. Ice Cube, Death Certificate, that debuted at number 2. That went platinum really fast. Ice-T, Original Gangster, also considered one of the 100 greatest rap albums ever. Tupac, we talked about. And then The Low End Theory by Tribe Called Quest. That album is like the go.
Yeah.
Tribe has always
Tribe
been
is the best, yeah.
between hip hop and jazz. That's also the album that like Busta Rhymes is on and he
Yeah.
launches. So it's all
Yeah.
You know.
It's very important,
right. It's just really, really cool in 1991, man, that like hip hop music takes off, said mainstream country music takes off.
But you still had you had all this cool hip hop stuff going on, but you still had MC Hammer on the charts.
Hammer was out. Yeah.
What song did MC Hammer have out?
He was too legit to quit.
Yeah.
Okay, he was on his way
Hammer.
out.
He
He was
wasn't
what-
MC
yeah.
Hammer anymore. He was Hammer.
Yeah, he's on his
too legit.
He's on his
to
way
quit.
out.
Yeah,
Then. Yeah.
A couple other songs maybe before we run into some of the albums. I'm just scanning through my list. So Anthrax and Public Enemy,
Dude.
man.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah,
That changed a lot of stuff for me. Just hearing that for the first time.
I should have mentioned Public Enemy's Apocalypse 91 on the list of hip hop albums because that is also one of my favorite That's one of my favorite hip hop albums of all time. I'll play a little bit of Bring the Noise. So that was on originally a Public Enemy song, and then they make a reference to Anthrax in that song, and that led to them doing a recording together, and it's awesome.
Well, even before that, you'd see like guys from Anthrax wearing Public Enemy shirts as they're giving concerts, like, you know. So there was always like a connection.
Let me play 30 seconds of the original Bring the Noise with just Public Enemy, and I'll play the one with the Anthrax. You can hear the difference of how much it's changed.
Bass, how low can you go? Death row? What a brother know. Once again, back is the incredible rhyme animal, the uncannibal thief. Public Enemy number 1, 5 volts and freeze. And I got numb. Can I tell them that I really never had a gun? But it's the wax that the Terminator X-Bun. Now they got me in the cell cause my records they sell. Cause a brother like me said, well, Farrakhan's a prophet and I think you wanna listen to what he can say to you. What you ought to do is follow for now. How the people say, make a miracle, deep up the lyrical. Black is back, all in, we're gonna win, check it out. Here we go.
All right, so then here's Anthrax and Public Enemies.
How low can you go? Death row? What a brother know. Once again, back is the incredible rhyme animal, the uncannibal thief. Public Enemy number 1, 5 volts and freeze. And I got numb. Can I tell them never really never had a gun? But it's the wax that the Terminator X-Bun. Now they got me in a cell cause my records they sell. Cause a brother like me said, well, Farrakhan's a prophet and I think you wanna listen to.
Well, you know what's pretty interesting about the recording of that with Anthrax? I read Scott Ian's book from Anthrax last year. He said when he made that album, he got Chuck D's like okay to do it. So he was Chuck D's like, oh, I'll come down and record. He's like, no. I'm going to split from
The
tape.
rapping?
He's like, I'm going to take it from the original track and I'm going to tape it into the Anthrax version.
Oh, really? That's
So-
how they recorded it?
Yeah, that's Anthrax recorded around Chuck D's vocal
No shit.
on the original. That was groundbreaking.
That was groundbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, that's like I can't think of another song between Walk This Way and this.
I think
That's a million times better.
And this is kicking the door down.
This is
yeah.
our generation of that. And it's better. It's heavier. It's more relevant.
Anthrax put out the Attack of the Killer Bees EP
Love
30
that
years
album.
ago.
Dude, I love that album. I listen to it all the time.
I wanted to send it to you guys last night. So as I was out running, I was listening to Public Enemy, and then I was like, let me jump into Attack of the Killer Bees.
Yeah.
And some of their songs are they're funny.
Oh,
You know, like
God.
there's-
yeah.
I'm the Man.
I'm the Man's on there. Like
Yeah,
91,
I'm the Man,
I'm the Man
91.
91. It's
Right.
great.
I Want Some Milk. Like,
Starting up a posse.
They do.
Yeah.
They do Parasite by Kiss.
Yeah.
It's
and then
awesome.
there's like that cheesy hair ballad at the end. It just
Yeah,
ends like,
yeah.
she got hit by a truck.
Yeah.
Just like out of the big four, I think they're my favorite because they
always loved
just
them.
have fun
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
and Scotty Ian is just a rocking guitar player.
He is. He's one of the greatest rhythm guitar players.
And I've always loved the heavy bass lines that Anthrax
Yeah.
has and all their stuff. I think that was the only one I still had on the list. You want to just kind of run down a couple songs, and if you guys got a reaction to them,
Yeah,
you wanna,
that sounds like fun.
All right. Brian Adams, Everything I Can Do, I Do For You, we already talked about. Oh, here. David Lee Roth, A Little Ain't Enough.
Dude, we've been watching that video all week.
That's-
And if you ever out there and you want to watch something over the top, you have to watch David Lee Roth's A Little Ain't Enough video. He's got midgets.
In blackface, and yeah, it's really weird.
It's
And
really weird.
That's kind of the beginning of the end for David Lee Roth.
You guys
Yeah.
were talking about this today, and I totally forgot about the Daily Roth. I'm like, what are you talking about? And you guys are like, little ain't enough. And I'm like, what was the video? And I instantly remembered it.
Well,
like you said, like midgets.
It was
in
like banned by
yeah.
MTV after a couple plays.
Was it really?
Yeah, they pulled it.
We saw him on that tour.
We did.
Did he have midgets in blackface?
Doug was. I wasn't.
Well, that's the benefit you get from having the bigger dick. Some other songs. Summertime by DJ Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince.
Classic.
That song will never die.
Yeah. We can play 30 seconds of that. I mean, especially doing this show in Philadelphia. This is, yeah.
This was like the last thing he was like musically good at.
It's his biggest hit. This is a relevant song anyway.
Here it is, a groove slightly trans. form. Just a bit of a break from the norm. Just a little something to break the monotony of all that hard.
EMF, unbelievable. 30 years old.
Big song.
Here's something we were talking about a little bit before this. We were playing this before as we were setting up, and I mentioned something that little hook in the background is Andrew Dice Clay going, "What the fuck was that?" And you guys were like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah, you listen to it closely. That's what he's saying." And I had that album, like the first pressing, that was what the lyrics said it was.
And they would play it on MTV.
Yeah,
And nobody would know.
That's saying what the fuck.
Yeah, I hear
That's
it.
hilarious. That's hilarious.
Just a little.
I never knew. I
here's your
never
little
caught on to that.
weird nugget.
That was a great song, though.
It was Jesus Jones right here,
Love
right
it.
now.
That's
Love it.
love it.
And that,
Like,
to me,
it's-
that just
I
reminds
still
me
love that song.
of the Berlin Wall coming down. Like, you
Yeah.
know, it was like very political.
Well, they said that's the song that started out the '90s. Was that song?
It's a great point. Yeah, I like that song
Like
a lot.
CNN even said that.
Blaze of Glory by John Bon Jovi, I think, came out in
That was a big
91.
soundtrack.
Great soundtrack.
Huge. Live Pain, Lives on the Riverside. Live is one of my favorite bands from the 90s.
Yeah.
I wound up seeing them over 20 times.
Sorry to hear that.
No, I seen them with you.
Yeah, we saw them the last.
They did
play a little.
Throwing Copper.
They're
Yeah.
a weird band.
Loved it. This was their first album.
I love this song.
I remember the first time I heard this.
This is just.
The bass player's great.
Madonna, Justify My Love.
Oh, I love it.
That song was actually produced by Lenny Kravitz.
Really?
Okay.
So the video was basically a porno. Right? It was like
Oh, yeah.
really dirty. Girlfriend by Matthew Sweet.
Really? That was in 91?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
We knew. Me and
Yeah.
Ryan know this song.
No? I love this song
Yeah,
too.
yeah, we had to play this song. But he's playing all the instruments himself.
Is he?
Yeah.
MC Hammer, we talked about. Natalie and Nat King Cole, Unforgivable.
That was huge.
Unforgettable.
That was huge.
It was
Remember that-
huge how they recorded that.
Yeah, like the
That was
duet.
that was groundbreaking.
The duet of them together. I didn't realize that song was 30 years old.
Yeah, that was groundbreaking how they recorded that
They got the masters, and then she sang.
on top of it.
It's pretty. It was. I mean, groundbreaking at the
Yeah.
time.
Oh,
right?
That was
yeah.
a huge
Oh,
song,
yeah.
though. That was big.
It won Grammys.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The Peace Choir doing "Give Peace a
That
Chance."
sucked.
It was terrible.
Oh,
it was
is that what they
awful.
did?
Lenny Kravitz and Sean
Duff,
Lennon.
Yeah.
Duff was in it.
So
and
I
that was
wrote,
bad.
I wrote a list and I cut out all the people I didn't know. It was supposed to protest the Gulf War.
Yeah, I remember it coming out.
But it was
yeah.
Yoko, Adam Ant, Terrence Trent D'Arby,
That's enough.
Flea, John Frusciante, Peter Gabriel, Bruce Hornsby, Lenny Kravitz, Cyndi Lauper, Sean Lennon, Little Richard, LL Cool J, MC Hammer, Michael McDonald, Duff McKagan, Alana Miles, Randy Newman, Tom Petty, Iggy Pop, Bonnie
Petty was in
Raitt, Run, Little Steven, Frank Zappa's Kids, Amit, Dweezil, and Moon Unit.
Dude, what? They go down to the rainbow and say, hey, we need people
Yeah.
singing.
It's not
But what they
good.
did, they recorded it, and then the next day they recorded a video for it. They were
Yeah.
trying to get it out. Like, let's end this war right now.
Yeah.
Well, I remember
try-
that. That
they
was
were-
Yoko.
They were trying to get it out before they dropped the first bomb.
I
Yeah.
totally remember
Yeah,
going into...
that was a big thing.
This is before I worked at a music store. I remember going
Yeah.
in and it was like next to the cash register.
Yeah.
Like, buy
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
It was just an awful attempt.
That was it. It was a disgrace.
PM Dawn, Set Adrift by Memory Bliss.
Love it.
That was the first...
PM
hip
Dawn was awesome.
It was the first
No.
hip-hop song to be a number one
Dude, they
hit.
were a psychedelic peace band. They were like
Yeah.
a hippie band.
I hear you, but
No, they had a good thing going on.
First
Yeah.
hip-hop song to
This is
ever...
the shit.
First hip-hop song to ever go number one.
electric chair song.
Nah, this is the shit, dude.
This is a sample from True by Spandau Ballet.
Never heard it.
Sure you have. You danced. You went to an 8th grade dance. You played-
CYO
CYO dance.
Yeah.
Come on. PM Dawn was awesome.
Is that? Oh, this is hard. This is bad '80s music.
Winds of Change by Scorpions.
Big song. That was a big
huge.
song. That might have been the last big hair band song before the takeover of grunge.
I hate that song.
You
I
heard
hate
it a billion
I hate that
times.
French singing. It's
They did that song in German too.
They're a
Germ-
huge
they're Germ-
band.
yeah.
Yeah.
They play
they're-
countries.
Yeah.
Yeah,
UB40, the way you do the things you do.
I never even
I
heard
don't
of
even know that song is.
Wait. Sorry. You've heard this.
You got a smile so bright.
Maybe.
Oh, I remember this song.
Could have been a candle. I'm holding you so tight. You know you could.
But then they had that other song, the "Falling in Love with You." Is that the same
That
year?
was years later.
This was the other hit they had this year.
Yeah.
I kind of remember this.
Ugly Kid Joe, Everything About
Yes.
You.
Yes.
That was Ryan's tune.
That was
Uncle
my song.
Tom's Cabin by Warrant.
That was Ryan's
Yes.
tune also.
And my personal favorite, Pop Goes the Weasel by Third Base.
That
Sure.
was
The
Doug's
video
song.
is amazing.
Doug
where-
was actually in that video.
You know the video where
yeah.
He
Vanilla...
looked just like that motherfucker.
You know the video Vanilla Ice comes out and they beat him with a baseball bat?
Yeah.
Do you know who plays Vanilla Ice?
Is it
It's
Henry
it's
Rollins? I was going to say it was Henry
No.
Rollins.
All right. I got a couple albums for you, too,
Okay.
to turn 30. Hey Stupid, Alice Cooper.
I've had it. I had it.
Stupid.
I love it.
I loved it. Trash.
No, it wasn't on Trash. It was on.
Oh, it was Hey Stupid. That's right. I bought Trash.
No, the album is called Hey Stupid.
Okay.
Yeah. Heart in Motion, Amy Grant.
No. Never heard of it.
I lent somebody that album. I never got it back.
CMB by Color Me Bad.
I love Color Me Bad.
Infectious Grooves. You guys remember
They
that?
were
Yeah, they're
awesome.
awesome, dude.
Mike Muir from Suicidal Tendencies, his
yeah.
side project.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Rob.
Yeah, Rob's in that band.
Yeah. They're not on Spotify. Their first album's
Really?
not on Spotify. It was great. Let me see if it's on like YouTube or something, because I feel like we should play a little bit of it because it was so.
They were funky, man.
It was really cool.
They had some great musicians backing them up. It was like the guys from Suicidal and the drummer from Jane's Addiction.
I kind of remember the song. You were really into them. I remember you.
I think
really
I still
being-
have the CD.
Yeah, I remember Ryan really being into them.
And it's cool because it's Suicidal Tendencies. Like, this is their...
Yeah.
Yeah, with Jane's Addiction.
Yeah. Metal Jewelry by Live. Mama Said.
God.
Lenny Kravitz.
Great.
Love. That whole album is great.
Emotions by Mariah Carey. We didn't talk about it. That
I don't
was,
even know what
I
that
mean,
is.
That's where she just
It's a
started.
huge-
It
Is
was
that
her
where she's
fa-
like
it was-
sings super high?
It was, yeah, it's every album, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
That's
like
when
her
she-
second album.
She was
a
so
huge
big.
hit.
Huge hit.
I think that was actually the best-selling album of the year in 91.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Blue Lines by Massive Attack. I really like Massive Attack, that kind of trippy,
I don't even know who they are.
jazzy kind of... They're like a trip-hop band. If you see a lot of music nerds will
I'll
say
have to
they're,
look- I'll
they're
look
on
into
there. Mr. Bungle.
Yes.
Mr. Bungle
Yes.
was a side project
Was
from
cool.
Mike Patton from
Oh,
Faith
Mike
No
Patton,
More.
Who else was in that band? Somebody else big was in that band too.
Mike McCree or somebody.
Scott Ian was in that band.
Yeah.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah. I think they're coming out with another album. Mike Patton's the man, dude.
Hole, Pretty on the Inside, their debut album.
That was a big album. That was a big
Yeah.
album.
I don't like them very much.
Nobody really does.
Prince, Diamond and Pearls.
Yeah.
Rod Stewart, Vagabond Heart. That's a bad album, but
Is
it
that
had
is that the song like that jukebox song like
Motown with
Yeah.
the Temptations.
Yeah,
and just
that was a
yeah.
big song though.
Seal's first album came out.
Crazy. that was a great
yeah.
song.
Gish by Smashing Pumpkins had a couple. Or Rhinoceros
Yeah,
was on that.
we
a
didn't
couple
really
other-
get into the Smash Gun. That was a big album.
Pocket Full of Kryptonite by the Spin Doctors.
Worst band of the '90s, hands down. They're my electric chair. My next one when it's my turn.
And one of my favorite bands from the 90s, Fear from Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Now
has come
that's
out.
a great band.
They're
a great band.
Nondescript, middle
Yep.
of the road college
Yep.
90s rock band. They're just one of my
Yes,
favorites.
me too. I haven't listened to them in a very long time, but I really enjoyed their music in the '90s.
All right, so that was just kind of the rundown of the list, man. I think that's everything that we covered. So You want to move on to the wrap up and get the hell out of here? You want,
Yeah,
you
let's
want,
wrap.
you want to do a lecture chair first, or you want to do listener feedback first?
Let's do listener feedback.
All right, so listener feedback. We got an email from Donna from somewhere in New Jersey and just said, "Hey guys, I really enjoy your show. I listen to it while I'm at work and like how you cover a bunch of different topics. I'm curious, I don't think you've ever said this. Who is your favorite band? Thanks." Well, thanks for that message, Donna.
What time is it? Like, what day is it?
Right.
I don't even know how to answer that. It's a great question.
Fish, hands down.
Yeah, Fish, the Grateful Dead.
Fish. Okay.
Yeah.
Springsteen. All right. Well, thanks, Donna, for the feedback. So let's move on to the electric chair. So that is a segment where we pick one song and we sentence it to death. Ryan, I believe this week it is your choice.
It is my pleasure to pick Maroon 5, Moves Like Jagger. I hate this dude so much. What's
He's a
his name?
Fish fan, too.
What's his name? The singer. Is it Adam Lambert?
No, that's a guy from Queen.
Adam Levine.
Adam Levine. Yeah, he's a Fish fan, right?
I don't care. He's
No, that's it. Kill it. Kill it.
We sentence you to death.
I never get tired of it. It's so funny.
When that song was out, I took a ride down South Carolina to go see her family down. So I had my niece Nicolette with us, and she was probably about 16 at the time. And that song came on. She's in the back seat singing it. I turn around, I'm like, "Do you know who this song's about?" And she's like, "No." And I'm like, she's like, "Give me a hint. What's the name? Like, I'll give you the first name of the band." And so I'm like, and she's like, I'm like, the Rolling Stones. She's like, "Oh, I've heard of them." Yeah, I know.
Isn't Mick Jagger in the video for that song?
No,
too?
I don't think he is.
No? Okay.
I don't know.
I'm sure he got paid
anything-
for it, though.
I don't know anything about that song, but I know it was going to the electric chair.
I'll have to do some more research. So, All right, cool. So let's wrap up and get out of here. Again, thanks to everyone who's been out there listening to us. We love you guys. Special shout out Mike Cianci for helping us with all the playlists to go with every episode, as well as to Rob Owens helping spread the word week in, week out about our show. You can check us out at prisonersofrockandroll.com or any place where you listen to your favorite podcast. Get in touch with us. We'd love getting feedback and getting you guys into the conversation. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter at Prisoners of Rock. Lastly, you can email us at prisonersofrockandroll@gmail.com. We publish playlists to go with every episode. You can find them on Spotify and Apple Music. We'll share links to them in the show notes and on our social media accounts. We made 2 playlists this week. We did one of the great music from 1991, and then we made one just for historical purposes of all the really crappy music that
It's
came out in
fun.
1991.
I had a good time making these playlists.
This was fun, man, going back into that time machine and
Sure.
just really living all this stuff and hearing how much
Yeah.
music changed.
Got a lot of flashbacks.
I
Yeah.
watched a lot of 91 videos and this year in rock, and I would never, ever, ever want to go back to the 90s.
The fashion alone, I wouldn't want to go
I
back.
would never want to
Ah,
go
the
back
flannels.
in time and live that life again.
All right, everybody. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. We're going to circle up and figure out what we're going to do next.
Keep on rocking!
Peace out.